Hello, and welcome to this ASMR record collection video. I'm so happy you're here with me this evening. Today, I want to take you on a journey through a few different records from different decades and reveal the ways that they are interconnected musically, and also share a little bit about how they contribute to the history of different music genres overall. So I hope you will find it both relaxing and perhaps a little bit interesting. So let's get started, shall we? This first record I'm going to show you was released in 1968, and it was an incredible feat of virtuosity on the keyboard, and it was groundbreaking in its time. So I'm going to turn it around, and you can see it has sort of a funny cover. When I first came across this record in a thrift store, I will admit that I thought it would just be a kind of silly novelty album. As you can see, it was only $1.99. That was quite some time ago. And I thought, well, for $2, it could be worth a try. So I really didn't have high expectations for it, and I wasn't familiar with it before I bought it. But it's actually a very interesting album, and when I listened to it, I thought, wow, these are actually really sensitive, interesting arrangements of the Bach compositions, and it sounded really cool. So as I dove deeper into the history of it, I became even more fascinated. So this record is called Switched on Bach, and it features incredible creative compositions and performances of the Baroque composers, some of the Baroque composers' work. And the really interesting thing about it was that prior to this album, synthesizers were not common in music. So thinking back to 1968, around that time, synthesizers were used more in experimental music, which wouldn't necessarily have the kind of broad popular appeal that a classical record might at the time. It was kind of a pioneering area of music at the time. So all of these compositions on the album are performed on a Moog synthesizer, an early Moog synthesizer, which was developed by a PhD student at, I believe it was Columbia University in the 1960s. And as a monophonic instrument, before the next note could be played, the prior note would need to be released. So it was actually very difficult to record, and took, I think, hundreds of hours, and was just an incredible feat. All of the recordings are performed by Wendy on the Moog synthesizer, pictured here. So as we talk about the cover art, I read that Wendy Carlos was also a little bit unhappy with the cover design for some of the same reasons that I was perhaps a little bit put off by it initially. It seems more like a novelty album with this kind of caricature-like artwork of Bach in front of the Moog synthesizer. And actually there were 2 different covers for this album that were released. Ultimately, it really made a splash in the music world and even with the popular culture, and it ended up selling over 1 million copies. So it did very well and brought electronic music, brought the synthesizer to the broad audience, and it began to be viewed more as a viable instrument for popular music. And from then on, many significant works by classic rock bands began to incorporate the Moog synthesizer and other synthesizers eventually as well. And these include Pink Floyd, so especially on Dark Side of the Moon, and The Doors, and Fleetwood Mac, which really, some of the Fleetwood Mac uses of the synthesizer are my favorites. This very shimmery, textural sound that gets incorporated. I'm really fascinated by the ways that different bands incorporated the synthesizer into their work. So it has sort of evolved, and in the 70s took on kind of this larger role in popular music, which kind of evolved in the 80s into other genres like synth pop. I will read a little bit to you from the back of this album. Bach à la Moog. In 1782, Mozart arranged a number of Bach fugues for string trio. Since then, many great virtuosos and composers have been sufficiently fascinated by Bach to take time out from their main pursuits to transcribe his music. Bach's work had thus always exerted a continuous magnetic attraction on musicians, and even today they repeatedly return to the study of his art to learn more about their own art. It is only natural, then, that today's electronic composers have continued this tradition. On the face of it, electronic music has a great deal to offer Bach. Many Baroque characteristics, such as crisp, bright sonorities, terraced dynamics, and high relief of voices, are among the most idiomatic features of electronic music. Indeed, no combination of live instruments could achieve the clarity of texture of this recording. At last, every note and line can be heard, which was one of our chief purposes when we first began to work on Bach. But of course, there is more to Bach than clarity. 2 years ago, this album could not have been made. With the equipment then available, to obtain the qualities that make up a good performance was a thankless, time-consuming, and ultimately futile enterprise. Even rudimentary phrasing, articulation, or modulation of timbre could involve many grueling hours for the production of mere seconds of music. Crescendo and diminuendo, the 2 most natural vocal or instrumental means of musical expression, required the most calculated and laborious manipulation of volume controls and filters. Even programmed or computerized attempts to automate spontaneity were entirely a matter of guesswork, and the musician was unable to even hear, much less modify, a sound as it was being produced. Only the least sophisticated means of expression, that is, timbral and dynamic contrasts, could be controlled satisfactorily. These and other limitations were evident any time an electronic composition contained a line at all instrumental in nature. It was at this impasse that Wendy Carlos implored Bob Moog, the originator of the commercially packaged synthesizer, to work with him in evolving new subsystems with which the production of more sophisticated nuances of expression could be a practical matter. So, this is Switched On Bach. All right, moving to our next record. Seemingly unrelated, but on the face of it, the Rolling Stones, Big Hits, High Tide, and Green Grass. So, the connection I wanted to share with you around this album is the incorporation of Baroque instruments and styles into popular music, more of a more experimental variety in the 1960s. In a previous video, we discussed pet sounds, which fits in to this trend. And we've also looked at Rubber Soul, in which one of the songs contained a piano recording that sounded like a harpsichord. Speaking of the harpsichord and sort of the Baroque pop niche of 1960s folk and rock, and in particular more psychedelic rock or folk, there's a song on this compilation, this Rolling Stones compilation, that incorporates this type of sound, and it's called Play with Fire. It sounds very differently from the blues-inspired work of the Rolling Stones prior to it. And the arrangement is fairly spare. It's one of my favorite songs and probably my favorite Rolling Stones song. And it has a harpsichord in it. So there's this very spare arrangement, as I said. And the harpsichord features pretty heavily, and also the voice, it takes center stage, the lyrics take center stage, and the subject matter is kind of a relationship with an upper class person. And I think that the Baroque sounding harpsichord fits in with thematically a little bit. So that was the main reason that I wanted to show you this album as connected with the others that we're talking about today. But in addition, I really wanted to explore this little booklet inside the album. You'll see that it's not in perfect condition. It went through a difficult move with some unexpected rain. The album is still playable. It's still in one piece, so I'll count it lucky. Here's the first page. We have this beautiful matte paper. Moving on, these very kind of moody close-up portraits. I really like the desaturated colors, the Kodachrome looking film, the sort of profiles facing away from one another, and the sunglasses, which I love. I always love especially 1960s vinyl. There's quite a bit of, wearing sunglasses to maintain that air of mystery, the mystique of a rock star. It's cool. I love it. Next, let's try to get this one. to separate from the others. They get a little bit stuck together after the water experience, but I think we can manage it. Now this kind of candid look at a performance and perhaps the recording process. We have Mick Jagger smoking a cigarette, being very unaffected. Next, this is probably my favorite page. I love the styling, the kind of simple, desaturated, styling and super close-up portraits. I love an extreme close-up portrait. It's one of my favorite things. Just kind of moody, different views that are quite similar but like slightly different. I like the repetition of these motifs. I believe that this is the American version. There's apparently a British version with different songs. So I'll read to you some of the songs on the album. As I said, it's a compilation. So it's called Big Hits, High Tide, and Green Grass, 19th Nervous Breakdown, Heart of Stone, Get Off My Cloud, Not Fade Away, Good Times, Bad Times, Play with Fire, I Can't Get No Satisfaction, The Last Time, As Tears Go By, Time Is On My Side, It's All Over Now, and Tell Me. So most of the songs on this album are written by Mick Jagger and Keith Richards, but I see that Play with Fire is not. Next, I would like to show you the album that kind of inspired this whole video, which is an album that came out in 2009 by Grizzly Bear. Veckatimest. I hope that I'm pronouncing it correctly. I really have always enjoyed the cover art for this album. It reminds me a little bit of a rock face. This really nice earthy green paired with the pinks, especially this strip of really bright pink here. Very pleasing to the eye. A simple typography that kind of mimics the vertical nature of the design. Goes together really well, I think. This is the back. This is a reissue of the 2009 album, and it is absolutely one of my favorite albums of all time. And the reason why I chose it with these other records and connect it with the two previous records that I mentioned are, for one thing, its beautiful use of synthesizers and many different instruments to create a very layered and textured sound that just takes you on a journey where different melodic motifs kind of ebb and flow, show up over and over again in new transformations, and there are moments of dissonance that are sort of resolved in this beautiful harmonic way. It's very evocative. I think that the vocals take a little bit more of a backseat almost, just to my ear at least, to the music, which is interesting to me because typically my mind will latch on to the lyrics first and the melody, just probably because of my time as a singer, and just really picking that out first of all. But with this album, it's hard to kind of call to mind what exactly the lyrics are about. I can think of the melodies, they're very memorable, and I've listened to them many, many, many times, but I don't have a strong association with different themes in terms of subject matter for lyrics as I do for something like Play with Fire that we just explored, or even, Tame Impala's Currents, which we looked at in a previous video as well. It's really more about the feeling. It's about the overall vibe of this kind of beautiful collection of sounds. And I just love it. So the other connection that I find between this and the other two albums is not only the electronic music, but the little hints of Baroque pop within it. So there's some unusual instrumentation, including the harpsichord, which also connects to Baroque music, as that was a classically Baroque instrument. I love the variety of instrumentation, and this is one album that I think that, it's not like background music for me. It's something that I feel like I need to sit down and just fully digest, fully appreciate, and give it my full attention. It reminds me a lot of the times that I listened to it when it first came out. And I like that now with the reissue of this vinyl, I am beginning to associate it with new happy memories. So I love the way that music stays with us and transforms as we evolve. Its meaning to us transforms. So this is one that I've come back to in different times of my life and found new excitement in. It's 2 records, as you can see. This lovely, soft kind of harvest orange color, and black, like a soft black here. Very pleasing colors for the inner aspects as well. Really nice paper texture. I'll read a few of the songs on this album for you. The first one is Southern Point. Next is 2 Weeks, which is probably the most famous song from this album. All We Ask, Fine for Now, Cheerleader, Dory, Ready, Able, About Face, Hold Still, While You Wait for the Others, I Live With You, and Foreground. It's published by Warp Records and made in the European Union. Grizzly Bear, Veckatimest. Last first of all was a record that one of our viewers mentioned in the comments in a previous record video, and I think that it fits in really nicely with the other record selections that we've looked at thus far today, and that is Tame Impala, The Slow Rush. The Slow Rush. This album was the album that followed Currents, which is an incredibly wonderful and popular Tame Impala album. It came out in 2020. And it connects well with the other two albums in the sense that it carries that thread of psychedelic rock / psychedelic folk that connects all the way back into the 1960s folk, rock, and pop music. This is some of my favorite cover art ever. I just adore this cover, both in the texture and the imagery, and I really love that Tame Impala and The Slow Rush are kind of just a small part of the overall composition. It's beautiful colors, the sands here, which kind of, to me, denote the sands of time. Another connection with our previous selections is its use of electronic music, so synthesizer music. I am not sure whether it uses analog synthesizers or not, but great synth sounds on this album. I think that the subject matter is wonderful, how it seems to connect with the sense of the passage of time that really comes across to me in this album as a whole. I'll show you the inside, which is equally beautifully styled. This desert image, really muted colors, and a gorgeous horizon. Sleeves look like this. The sleeves, which has also this small insert similar to the inside of the record. And the record looks like this. Very spare, kind of vintage typography and minimalist design. The other record has this sort of surreal image similar to the cover on a matte paper. Really incredible artwork on this as well. Thank you so much for joining me this evening for this little record collection video and for being part of our growing ASMR community focused on discussing records, music, books, ideas in a relaxing manner. Until next time, I wish you the best.